Yeah, thanks for having me. It's already interesting. I mean, just listening in a few minutes with Tanya just before me. Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons, and actually it's interesting actually there's a few reasons why I came, or I'm happy to be here and happy to come on this is, I think there's a lot of kind of topics which are quite important, and I think it's important to share maybe some of them. And, I'm also on my journey, so I don't want to say I'm speaking from any position of wisdom at all, but, I think it's a continuous learning, but I think there might be a few things which are interesting to share. So I'm just thinking about I think the three things I would like to share today is like my personal experience so far. So maybe as a reference, I'm 29 years old. I think, the first thing is follow your passions, and I'm happy to provide a few anecdotes and stories why I really believe in that. I should probably add on this one. I will add a fourth one I just thought of. Another one will be values, and why sticking and developing your values, especially in your youth, is so important, and I think will really guide you through all your life. Then maybe also, maybe put in a bit easy, don't take things too seriously. I think that's something, especially in our youth, and you just mentioning 14-year-olds nominated for Forbes 30 under 30, and it's amazing to get awards, but I think one thing we also have to be careful is not to take things too seriously and try to kind of stick ourselves and value ourselves by awards or memberships, all these kind of things. And maybe also just one thing, another thing I probably would mention, serendipity. I'm happy to provide us some stories on this as well, just to kind of, I think that goes really into kind of follow your passions and values, and don't take things too seriously, but I think it's an overall theme, which is quite powerful. And also just one thing I want to say, which I'm really happy also to see in your kind of program here, is that, that gender balance is something you just mentioned with Tanya just before. It's something you take seriously, and I think it's so important. I can give you a quick fun story, or like quick story. I was actually invited to give another talk just before this week as well. It was a really esteemed kind of audience, but I rejected in the end because, I accepted first, and then actually I realized that they didn't have any female panelists, and it was a group of 4 or 5, and I told them, I'm not speaking at any panels if there isn't one woman at least. And, we had a very long discussion, and, it took like half an hour or something. And end of the day, I think they got my point, but it ended up that they didn't manage to find a female speaker, which really puzzled me, because as you have done yourself, as as we hopefully all know, is that there are amazing women out there, probably more than men, or at least as many. So it still puzzles me that there's a lot of events where they apparently don't get that. And then also intergenerational mentorship and kind of advice. I was just talking to a personal advisor of myself, and even people just like 10 years ahead of yourself, or 5, sometimes a year, or not even age, but experience, I think, so powerful. So I'm really excited you have a really broad audience and speakership as well, from their youth to like people just in the end of their lives. And I think it's very important that we have these discussions. Anyways, that's why we just bit for the framing. In the next few minutes, I think I want to talk a bit about the 3 or 4 things I mentioned before. So follow your passions, as you have seen, or we see my background, it's full of batteries, and it's a passion I have. And I think this might be a fun story. So I had passions, all kinds of passions in my life, and I still do. And, my first kind of venture, you could say, was with 16 actually. And it was a publishing house for poetry. It was my best friend in Berlin. I'm from Berlin originally. And he would write great poetry. And I thought, there's a bigger audience than his grandparents and myself. And we started publishing it in the nights and the copy shops, and it was a lot of fun. Then we realized that actually, it's not the coolest thing with 16 to do poetry, unfortunately, still, though I wish it would be. And actually what happened was that, we expanded. So I learned how to make websites, and suddenly we became about 30 artists, from musicians to DJs and illustrators, etc. So suddenly we have quite a group, and became an artist collective, Feist, that was called, in Berlin. And we did events. We had our own gallery opening at some point with some partners. We did an event in open air events. We had a festival, we called it, for 2,000 people. And we even had a really big event with a lot of partners for up to 20,000 people in an island in the Netherlands. And all this happened really my age, maybe between 16, 19, 20, something like that. So it was quite a lot of crazy, adventures at the time. And, I came from a school background that actually in elementary school, they didn't want to put me in higher education, and I was really skeptic about it. And I worked my way through it, right? And I managed to get a, get a Victorian in my high school, etc. But all along this way, I always had this art outlet next to chemistry and physics, which really kind of pushed myself. And I had a lot of debates with family and friends, and why would I spend so much time on these arts? And I always believed in it, and I thought it was the right thing. My parents are quite arty people, so maybe it comes from there. And yeah, so I just followed my passion. And looking back now, this really prepared myself for running an organization like Battery Associates. What I'm doing now is because it's really about bringing people together, get people like, on a common vision and mission, and, get people from different backgrounds to collaborate. And so I think, in a weird way, these early experiences really helped me. And even now we're very artsy. We have, own online dance parties, and we are really, pushing the boundaries, I think, of, what a company stands for and kind of community and these kind of things. So I think a lot of these experiences really stem from my early days. And also, just a really fun fact, this week I actually got an email from one of my former teachers at high school, and they sent me an email where they, congratulated me for my final capstone thesis for high school, who I got a very good grade for. And they were saying, really congratulations to write this at a time, because it still holds in a way. Because what I actually did is I wrote a thesis about how to about pandemics and how to mitigate them with vaccines, with a special focus on vaccine development. And at the time, I was super lucky to actually work to go to the US even during my holidays in high school, and work with some of the people there, and just learning from some of the really big names at the NIH, which is a big research center there in the US. And it's almost crazy. This was 2010, and I did this at a time. And at the time, I was really thinking, after high school, I was really thinking about what should I do in my life. And I decided I thought there are two important topics for my life. And one would be pandemics. And, I think this will be a big threat in health to our society. And the other threat I saw was climate change. And I actually started studying both. So I studied both chemistry and physics and biology in Maastricht in the Netherlands. But then I decided I want to do a batteries or energy storage, because to be honest, one practical sense was that with vaccine development, I had to go to a laboratory every 12 hours and feed my cells. And battery cells are much more, you see them behind me, they're much more lenient. You can let them run for months and don't complain so much. So it was a quite practical standpoint in a way, and that's a few other considerations. But it's kind of funny, that I think I had probably pretty good idea at the time, weirdly enough, what will be important for my life. But I just followed my passion, and I always did from arts. I did a consultancy afterwards. I had my own political party. I tried some stuff there in the Netherlands with like university politics, etc. So, just learning, I think it's all about learning, follow your passions, whatever they are. You might not know why you need them in the future, but I think if you keep an open mind, you'll probably find many reasons why it's good to do the things later on. And, Steve Jobs really said so well, was you can only connect the dots afterwards. You can't connect them before. And then also maybe just values as well as, I think thinking about this, I always try to have a very strong value framework. And there are many reasons why people have values. There's faith, and there's belief, and all kinds of things. And for me, it was just really, trying to do the right things. And it's always a test, right, in many ways. But I think it's very important that we create our own values and we stick to them, because there's so many things in our lives, especially these days, which are going to change. And probably there will never be. It's a really crazy time we're living in, and it's very hard to predict the future. But I think having your values you can like stick yourself to is just really important. And and I think it's good to have some values, which of course is not just about yourself, but just really care about other people, right? Like really think about how you can help other people, because if you do that all along your life, you will get back. And here also this comes to serendipity again. There's a lot of research about this, and I don't want to go into too much detail, but I also built a platform which is now used by people, and it's been used by people with over 200 cities and 100 countries, called Serity, or Random Shaper, for the Global Shapers community. And one thing I really experienced is, we're all the same in some degree, right? It doesn't matter where you are. You can talk to people in Tehran, or people in, in Pakistan, or like, wherever, like Australia. Like many of your audience, I think we hopefully understand by now that we have very common problems. Of course, there are different challenges and wherever we are, but I think, we working together is the best way to kind of mitigate these problems and challenges. And then maybe also one thing about not taking things too seriously. I already hinted on this with the awards. I think, I did a little myself, and I luckily have some mentors and advisors who have been, also helping me on this one, and realizing actually a lot of really, people earning a lot of awards early on have challenges to, stick with their mission later on, because it becomes like a weird driver, like awards are very strange. They can be very useful, but it can also be dangerous, because if you just work for awards, it's probably not you. If you don't work for the work, you will, I think you don't have the right motivation. It will hit you at some point, and you probably get a midlife crisis, one of these things. And of course, we don't want that if possible. And I think also the thing is that, for example, after high school, I had this really crazy breakdown, essentially, where I wanted to study, I wanted to really make the right decision what to study, and I had four options, and I really had a really hard time because I felt like the entire world would depend on my decision. And looking back, I think I realized that it really doesn't matter at all. I think that's one of these lucky things. It really doesn't matter at all what you do now, because nobody's changing the world. Really, nobody is. It's always a group of people, and if you're lucky, you will meet the right people and you will make a big change together. But nobody itself should put the pressure on themselves that it is your responsibility to change the world, because I think it's just the wrong kind of thinking, because it will just put way too much pressure on one person, and also it's not true. Whoever successful person you see, and they will never do it by themselves. I wouldn't be anything without the people who have been supporting me along my journey. They're still fantastic people. Of course, you have to put in your own work. You have to do your things, like in your PhD, you have to write yourself and things like that. But in the end of the day, don't underestimate the importance of other people around you, and don't overestimate yourself that you are the one who has to change it all. Of course, you probably won't, and I think that's also quite helps sometimes put things in perspective and make sure you have a good life. Make sure you give back to your surrounding and just don't think about the world all the time. Of course, it's very important, but also make sure that you stay sane, you're mentally stable, you're physically stable, you can be your best of yourself. I think that's been important as well. I think, Marcelo, those were like a few of my thoughts. I'm happy to expand on any of these. Yeah.
I like the stream of consciousness. So the expression of someone who learned very early what you cared about, and you managed to focus down to going all the way to doing a PhD in one of your passions, which is very challenging. So one of the questions would be, when is a PhD the right decision, right? Because it's such a long time commitment, and it's something that is required for certain fields of expertise. If you want to work with particle physics, you most likely need to have one of those. Of course, if you're doing the deep research. But what are the kind of goalposts, or your personal decision points when you said, yeah, this is definitely for me? And how can a teenager today figure out if this is a career track that is going to be their path to personal fulfillment?
I mean, it's a very tricky question. I think there's a few kind of things I would think. One is, I mentioned I wrote this high school thesis. What age was I? Maybe 17, 18, probably 19, and about 20 pages, right? And it wasn't necessary at the time. You could have only done a presentation, or you write a thesis and you do a presentation. And weirdly enough, I did both because I just felt so passionate about it. I guess this was the first good indication that I would enjoy something like this. Other than that, I felt it's very needed to be taken serious enough. I can tell I have many big ambitions and dreams and plans, and I realized that if I want to be taken serious enough in industry, the doctor or PhD will help me a lot. And I can tell you, like, having a doctor on your LinkedIn helps just to connect with people, for example. And then, of course, a brand like Cambridge helps as well. Beyond that, I mean, honestly, when I did a PhD, I really, was a full scholarship. So for like 4 years, essentially. And I just thought, and I wouldn't have done a PhD otherwise. I think, in the US, I was very uncertain. I had would have 1 year funding time, and I felt quite nervous about that. So I think for me, it was really, when I did a PhD, I was thinking, this would be a great time. And I think that's how I decided all my studies. I had quite a tricky time also to decide my undergraduate, and essentially I chose the no name of them all, like the university where I went, and there wasn't even, the study was the first time they would ever do it with my year. So they didn't even know if they would get the full accreditation at the end of it, right? So again, it goes to not taking it too seriously, and at the same time also follow your heart. And again, here, I think what kind of happened was that with the PhD, in the end of the day, I just felt, it was a great kind of 3-4 years to just follow my passion and do what I want, right? I think it's a very unique thing to do research, to follow your passions. But I want to be honest, I think if you look at PhDs, about 50%, I think the statistics, especially in Cambridge, a place like that, and I think probably more globally, about 50% got clinically depressed at some point during their PhD, especially at the end. So it's a very tough thing. And I mean, I found it challenging as well at times. So I think that's something to be really aware of. I think if you want to do a PhD, for me, there's two main decisions. One is, or three things. One is you have to be passionate about a subject area. You don't have to be subject about the title itself because it will most likely change. For me, it changed a lot from what I started, what I ended up with my PhD. Second, you want to make sure that you choose the right professor. Honestly, the professor will be going to decide about 95% of your happiness doing a PhD, in my opinion. So that's really important. Somebody you can look up to, and not just professionally. They're very amazing professors, but you have to make sure they're also, you like the profession personally. And I've been extremely lucky with some of my mentors here and my professors. And yeah, you have seen the ups and downs as well. But I think it's really important to make sure you find people you can look up to as a person, not just as a professor. And then, or the third will probably be to have a really good support system, right? You need people who can take care of you, who can build you up, because a PhD is a program to fail. PhDs are designed in a way that you will fail probably 99 or at least 95% of the time, at least in research, what I've been doing. 95 of my ideas didn't work, and you have to kind of pick up yourself many times. So what you become really good at after PhD is to deal with failure, hopefully, if you do it right, in my opinion. But at the same time, it also, if you're not carefully, you will be jaded for a long time. I know a lot of PhDs who never fully recovered. I know quite a few who had to cancel in the middle, like, quit, and they have this great thinking of failure, which I think is not, necessary, because you fail at times. But I think that's very dangerous. And I think one thing maybe just to add to this one is also people think they will end in academia afterwards. And I think if you look at the pyramid of academia, probably like less than 1% of people actually will end up in academia. So make sure the PhD is not designed to end up in academia. It is, no, that's wrong. PhDs are designed to end up in academia, but 99% of people don't end up in academia. And that's one of these big issues we're also now trying to solve with battery associates, right? To really help these people who have been in academia to do this transition, because they all have to at some point, and we know that, and they don't believe it yet. And then at some day believe it, or someday they realize it. They don't just believe it, and then they usually get depressed and have a really hard time. And I can tell. I've seen myself and I have friends, and I think it's dangerous. So I think I don't want to dissuade you people of PhDs, but I want to kind of make sure that people don't do it for the wrong reasons. And I think here again, a PhD, if you do it for the title, same to awards, it will be tough for 3, whatever years, 5 years you have ahead of you, because if you just do it for the title, probably at some point you realize nobody cares enough about the title, and that this will be worth the sacrifice. So if you don't do it because for the passion to find things, to have a great support system, have a great kind of thrill about learning, and having great people to do it with, it will be very challenging. So I wouldn't recommend it necessarily.
And the other thing is that in Germany, it's very common that you have the Herr Doctor, you have the PhD on your job title.
Yep.
In other countries, that is not necessarily seen a good thing. In fact, it could be negative. If you say the PhD after the title, you go like, "Oh no, you think you're better than anyone else," kind of attitude. And it's not necessarily the case at all. It's just like a distinction that allows you to use those 3 letters, but it really depends on the culture around you. And yeah, being prepared to fail is probably the best lesson you can have before you get into a startup, right? So
Absolutely.
the point being, I need funding of X $1,000. Like, let's multiply that by 5 because I'm going to fail 4 times on the way there. And then you're going to find investors who understand that you're trying to do something truly innovative, and you avoid the trap of being with investors that said yes first. They gave you the money, but they don't have the patience. They just want to have a return in 3 to 5 years, and then either spin off, get acquired, do an IPO, and that's it. And you start having the wrong kind of pressure, right? If you're really trying to do something that is shifting a paradigm, no matter how small that paradigm may be, it could be a component in a battery that would give you a 5% efficiency gain. And yeah, that is not going to change the world, but you know what? That's going to save a huge amount of resources, a little bit like planes that go to storage in a desert in California because they're 10% less efficient than the latest engines. And that justifies the airlines just saying, we're never going to use this plane again. But we still don't want to scrap them because we may need to have a little bit of a stretch capacity, right? So 5% or 1% or whatever is sometimes a huge step, especially in the battery industry, where it's so hard to get additional efficiencies after so many years. And not many people out there realize that batteries were invented way before the combustion engine. We should have had battery cars 100 years ago, And one of the few reasons why combustion engines won is because they played dirty, right? No, the Henry Fords of the world, they made sure the batteries didn't have a chance back then to get the funds and to evolve faster. So getting efficiencies and getting things done well in the battery space is phenomenally difficult. And kudos to you for trying. It was amazing that you chose this sector.
I appreciate it. And I think, as you say, I think we're now in a really exciting transition. I think people don't really realize yet how much it's changing. Like, electrification going fully electric, and it's kind of going very rapidly, right? I think people should not underestimate that. And I think not everyone is aware of that. I'm also like energy storage and these kind of things, households, energies, the flip is it's moving super fast. And, we can see the announcements every week now, or almost every day. And, like biggest battery production happened next to Berlin now from Tesla and these kind of things. And, all the big OEMs moving completely electric now. And, hydrogen is not really in the picture anymore from mobility anyway. So I think it's really fascinating. I think it's also like, this is the youth, right? Like the youth has the chance now to have a massive, tremendous, change here. And I think also having like chance to kind of equalize things a bit more, right? Like I think, if you look at mechanical engineering and all these things, there was a maybe less than 5% women or something in electrical engineering as well and stuff. But I think we have to get to almost 50%. And I think we can do that. It's something we're trying to help support. And we have things we're working on as like a battery course, with all female speakers and these kind of things. And I think there's lots to be done. And like our advisory board is almost gender balanced. I think we're about 40% right now, which is also very unique. All our advisory board is everyone's below 40. So I think there's, we have the chance to really design things in new ways. Like, we don't take any investment either. We are doing all bootstrapped. We don't take third-party investors because we know then we have to also kind of, adhere to their rules. And we don't want to do that because we have a very clear mission and vision, what we want to achieve. So, I think that's one of these things, if you're young, you're in this great position that you don't just have to follow other people. It's very important that you follow advice and you always, listen to people. But at the same time, you should also be able to think for yourself. I think the biggest thing you can learn is how to think for yourself, because this will, always be with you and always guide you.
It's really great. So, any a specific, well, actually, I do have a question for you. If we have
Sure.
teenagers who want to do an internship with your company, is
Mm.
that something you're open to, and how could that happen?
Super. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have now in our company, just to give a bit of feel of scale, right? So we started full time. I started exactly 1 month ago, full time on this one, and the last month we grew to over 50 people. But to understand this, we have now people from, like, I was just talking to one of my advisory board members, and she's the CEO of Siemens Oman, right? And super fantastic woman, and learning a lot from her still, and she's a good friend, I think, by now. Anyway, so I think, that's absolutely possible. So we have about 50 volunteers, I would say. We only have 3 paid staff next to me at the moment. So we're super open for internships. We can probably not offer that much money compared to others maybe, but so far this doesn't seem to be a problem. We're just talking to University of Munich, to here. They probably will give us a few of their MBA or master students, and, super open. Also, I can say one thing maybe here, and this might be a bit controversial for some people, but, I think someone who has been involved in Fridays for Future we will look, I personally, but also a company will look at them very favorably than somebody has perfect grades, right? I think, having mission-driven people have shown they've been organizing themselves in the youth. People have been sticking up to values in the youth. It's much more interesting for us than people have just been following the road.
Well, this is precisely the right forum to make that kind of statement. That's what we're trying to do. Accelerating their wisdom also means accelerating the it's the velocity of experimentation, right? I usually joke saying that this is a bit like a tapas restaurant for the mind. You taste a little bit of everything to figure out what clicks.
Yeah.
And if we have um, participants, someone on YouTube saying, "Wow, wonderful! I would like to get involved," say, "Hey, just go over there." I'm sure that if you're between 13 and 17, you're not going to be traveling to Germany, and you're not going to get a job.
But we're fully remote, right? We're fully remote. We don't have any offers. We operate now in 15 countries. So, and it's just growing by the day, right? So I think, and we have people, right? We have volunteers, so 16, we have volunteers over 60. So I think, if there's very different like streams, how we do that. We have backend developers and front-end developers, and we have we have roles for everything. We're scaling very quick. We have, 8 projects right now going parallel. We work with governments, we work with big companies, NASA approached us, NASA contractors, I think a week or 2 weeks ago, helping them for the lunar mission. And, I think, we have a lot of crazy stuff going on, and, whoever's excited about stuff like that, always reach out. And also can be, right, that if you're underage, you can't be work, right? So you could do some volunteering. But of course, if you work well, then of course, if you want to have a real job, once you turn whatever age you want to, like 18, whatever, or you after study, that's absolutely possible. Yeah.
Yeah, the other thing, just before I wrap, because the next speaker's already here, but the parents are going to be the supervisors. They'll be the ones saying, you're committing to spending 2 hours a day doing that, and we all agree that this is okay, considering the workload that you have from school. Now you're going to be committing those 2 hours, right? So you have the parents on your side, and whoever working for your company is going to be the supervisor is going to have an ally to make sure that everybody wins. So I think that.
And this has to be truly voluntary, right? There's we don't want to do child labor in any way. So I think it's important, as you say here, right? Like I think what happened with Fridays for Future is amazing because people all around the world, and that's what's really, honestly, I think a lot of the change we see right now is definitely thanks to Fridays for Future. And I'm extremely grateful for all of these young people just putting in, just pushing with their values, what they believe in, and like understanding what's happening if they don't change. So, I think it's really exciting. And, I think if people stick to their values and people don't forget to think, what's important for the world and for themselves, I think we're in a good place.
Yeah, and of course they should be doing that from passion and curiosity, but having the parents on your side makes it easier for you, right? So you can always relate to them and ask, is your son or daughter having problems at school? We can give them a break. So it's a sustainable structure where everybody potentially benefits. So definitely, keep that in mind and suggest that to participants and the existing members as well. I'll ping them asking if anyone would like to have a chat with you with someone working for you about this.
Sure. Yeah. As I say, like also always happy to help people, and there's always a limit of time, but in whatever time we have, we're also happy to support people.
Yeah, excellent. So thank you so much, Simon, and congratulations on going to the moon.
I would see. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
All the best.
Bye.